just want to share a quick word out of the book of Zechariah. We're going to be in chapter 7. So, excuse me, if you have your Bibles, please open them up to Zechariah 7. But as you're doing that, I just want to say that no matter where you are, no matter what context, no matter what capacity that God has called you to serve in this season, I just truly want to thank you for what you do. Whether you're making kindness campaign calls, you're on the web team, you're on the publishing team, video team, audio team, lighting, janitorial, parchment, SOPO, and the list goes on. I'm sorry if I didn't mention your department, but truly, no matter where you are, thank you for what you do. I have the unique capacity and opportunity as a pastor to speak to a lot of the people that you've already interacted with, and I can tell you firsthand, you are changing people's lives. People are better because of what you're doing for them. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you for your faithfulness in this season. I know it's been a stretch, but thank you. But with that, let's jump into our passage. We're going to be in Zechariah 4. For some quick context, Zechariah was ministering. He was prophesying after the time of the exile. So this is after Jews had started to return to the land of Israel. And at the beginning of this chapter, the people living in Bethel send a delegation to go speak with Zechariah. They need some divine direction on whether they need to continue a season of mourning, a season of fasting that they've been continuing on for 7 years. They're asking, do we need to keep doing this? And I'm about to read God's response. I think it's very, very interesting, starting in verse 4. I'm reading out of the NIV, by the way. Then the word of the Lord Almighty came to me. Ask all of the people of the land and the priests, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th months for the past 70 years, was it really for me that you fasted? And when you were eating and drinking, were you not just feasting for yourselves? And note, God never actually answers their original question. Their question was, hey, do we need to continue this fasting, this mourning? God never answers that. He never says, yes, you need to keep doing it, or no, you can stop. What he does say is, why were you doing it? Why did you even start doing that in the first place? What was the heart posture behind that? God is far more interested in our heart posture behind the act of worship than in the act of worship itself. I think that's what these people had missed. They thought that they just needed to perform a ritual for God's favor, but God is saying, why are you even doing it? What's the point? And I think, if we're being honest, I think we've been living in something of our own exile in this time. Not on this scale by no means, but we've been separated from our friends, separated from our family, separated from our loved ones, separated from our church, obviously. Our church worship, our church routines have looked very different over these last several months, and we've been separated just from routine, from normalcy. And now we are entering into what I believe is a season of rebuilding. Much like the people returning from exile were able to start rebuilding, they started rebuilding the temple and the wall and rebuilding that level of pre-exile life. I think we're in that same season where we are starting to rebuild some of our routines that we had before this all started. But I think what we need to ask ourselves, and it's a hard question, I'm having to do it a lot, this is something I've been working on personally, is we need to ask ourselves as we rebuild these routines, as we get back to some level of normal. We know that normal is going to look different post-COVID, but even as we start to return to some of these routines, we need to ask ourselves, why were we doing this in the first place? Especially when it comes to our own worship. Why were we doing this? Was this a ritual simply to do because we checked a box, or were we truly doing it out of an attitude of devotion? We need to ask ourselves those questions. Why were we doing it? Who are we doing it for? Because I think if we're honest, so much of what we do, if we really dig down, especially when it comes to those of us who work in ministry, we get into these habits, these routines where we are no longer doing quote unquote holy things for holy motivation. We've just gotten into that routine. It's just something we do. It's a ritual. We need to start re-examining our heart in light of that. And when we're returning that, we must be asking, who am I doing this for? Am I doing this for God, or am I doing this for some selfish motivation at the end of the day? And I'm so guilty of that. I'm so guilty of that in this season. But beyond that, not only should we be asking, who am I doing this for? We need to be asking, who am I helping with this routine? As we rebuild, especially entering this season of rebuilding, much of what our church does in a public sense, interacting with people, who are we helping? And God says this a little bit lower in the passage in verse 8. Let me share it with you. And the word of the Lord came again to Zechariah. This is what the Lord Almighty said: administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless, the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other. And like all of us, we are motivated by the greatest commandment. love the Lord our God with all of our heart, soul, and strength, like Jesus said. That means that we need to look at our motivations for what we do, our acts of worship. Are we doing it truly because we want to love the Lord our God? But not only that, we must love our neighbor as ourselves. These routines, what we are rebuilding, what we're returning to, we must be doing that from a heart of wanting to love our neighbor. And if our routines, if our way of life pre-COVID that we're also desperate to return to, we need to also ask ourselves those hard questions. That routine, that way of life, was I helping people? Were there people that I was ignoring? Were there people who were in pain? And we all know, especially those of you who've been making kindness campaign calls, people who were employed pre-COVID are now homeless. There's been so much shift societally in this season that we need to be even more aware of those who are hurting, those who are in pain. There's even more opportunity for us to love our neighbors now than I think there was pre-COVID. But we need to ask ourselves, the normalcy that we're trying to return to, is that a normalcy that's helping our neighbors or ignoring our neighbors? And I am so guilty of that. That's a question I've had to ask myself, and that's an uncomfortable question that I don't like asking. But we have to ask, who are we helping with these routines as we rebuild this? But just in closing, I just want to say, I believe we are entering into an exciting season. I'm excited, especially when it comes to practically with Spectrum. We're getting ready to meet again. We're obviously just less than 2 weeks out from getting to gather together in church. I am so excited. This is an exciting season. We have so much opportunity, but let's be sensitive to the Spirit. Let's be sensitive to the Spirit and asking, when we look at the routines that we're going to build, is this something that we need to return to because it was a good routine, or do we need to start being ready to create new routines where maybe perhaps our old routines didn't worship God fully and didn't help our neighbors fully? We need to be sensitive to the Spirit, and I'm so grateful, and I love serving on a team with all of you because I know that that's what we're going to do. That I'm so grateful to serve on a team with all of you who are sensitive to the Spirit, and I'm so excited that I know that where we go, that we are going to be sensitive to the Spirit, and I'm excited to know that the Spirit's going to show up. No matter what post-COVID Calvary Church looks like, I'm excited to serve with all of you because I know the Spirit's going to be there. So I hope that's an encouragement and exhortation to you. God bless you guys. I love you all so much. Have a great day.